Vanessa, welcome. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you here today. And I know we agreed you'd interview me, and I said, let's do it over a cup of coffee with our feet up and not get too cerebral, because that's what mental health wellness is about. Make mistakes, crack jokes. So it's over to, ladies and gentlemen, Inspiring Vanessa. Let's give her a big hand. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I'm just very excited to obviously have this conversation with you. I feel like it's been such a long way. I know you guys had a big countdown to World Jenny's Day, and it's finally here, World Mental Health Day. So yeah, it's just going to be really casual. If anybody has any questions for Jenetta, also leave them in the comments box, and we'll be sure to go through them, or any advice you need from either myself or Jenetta also, then please feel free. This is a safe space for you to open up about anything. So my first question is, well, like a huge aspect of World Jenny's Day is showcasing mental health through different art forms. That's what really drew me in to this whole project and this whole idea, and that's why I'm an ambassador, which is so amazing, and I'm so grateful that I am one. So why is it important to you, and what is important to you, the fact that we get to portray mental health through the arts?
Oh, it's a lovely question. The reason why it's so important is because I have noticed that when I work with theatre and the arts generally, it softens conversations. It takes any contentious topic and turns it around so that people respond differently to it and about it. And I really believe deep in my heart that when more and more people step into their creative genius, the more potential for new, powerful, heart-centered conversations will be presented itself. Because we've forgotten that our creativity is the seed of all that we are, because we are creatures of creation. We have been created as part of the great grand creation creator. I call the grand orderly design. That creation side is a vital part of who we are, and a lot of the time it's been taken out of the equation of who we are as we become very logical and factual. The moment we bring in creativity, it softens conversations and brings out amazing heart-centered conversations and solutions.
I couldn't agree more, honestly. I couldn't agree more. I mean, something that I've like realized over my journey as well, and you kind of tell people, they ask you like, how do I don't know, deal with what I'm going through, basically. And it's always like, oh, find somebody to speak to, or find a way to write it down and let out your feelings. But then you kind of have to think to yourself, what if these people don't have somebody to speak to, or they don't feel comfortable speaking to someone, or writing things down or writing their emotions down doesn't help them? Then what other ways can they basically release what's bothering them inside? And that is through basically just expression and obviously creativity, which I think is so special. And we see it, sorry, we see it so much nowadays, where people put their thoughts and feelings into a song, and that then relates to so many more people. So it really is such a powerful thing, especially, and I think more attention should be brought to that as well. So I know that the Kenyan theatrical production did a performance of Insight, which left an enormous impact on the youth and audience members. So what do you think about the production that made it so touching to so many?
Yes, now you can stay around all the time. Can I have you permanently at home? Because this is where my passion sits, is in this production. And we will get it out there internationally, franchise. So what it is that's so important and I'm so passionate about is that when people start performing this production, you watch them shift. Even the performers start shifting. And especially in Kenya, I don't know if you know this, Vanessa, but it until recently, it was a punishable offense to try and commit suicide. You could go to prison. And you
How
think,
does
oh,
that
that's
work?
quite archaic. You think, well, that's archaic and that's very third world. I have to tell you, it was a British law that the British,
Wow.
and it used to be a law here in the UK as well. It got changed, but it'll get changed in Kenya. I think Tani was telling me a few months ago it's been legislated for change and probably has changed by now. But when we put on this production, people were scared to talk about their mental health issues because there was a punishable offence for trying to act out suicide or carry out suicide and surviving. And also a lot of stigma in tribal side to it as well. So it's really, really difficult for the youth there to be able to safely express. And here was a medium that they could start expressing. We worked 9 months with them, prophetically also 9 months, like this World Jenny's Day. It just blows me. So that was the first thing. But I think the big thing was I stood in that foyer after the performances to deliberately listen to conversations. And people were coming out of that theatre into the foyer and they were having conversations about their mental health challenges to each other as though they were talking about the coffee date they had last week. Remember when I was like that? It was because, and they're verbalizing it in front of everybody. But the biggest story was the family that came, grown-up kids, mum, actually stepmom, and dad, and gran, their nan. And they watched the whole production and they came up, and they're all talking and then into the car and it's still going and the chatter and the chatter and the jabber. And suddenly this little voice from behind said, "Can I say something?" And they went, "Yes, Nan, what is it?" She said, now she's in her late 70s, early 80s. "I have been secretly suicidal and depressed my whole life. And until tonight and watching that production, I don't feel safe enough to tell anybody." And they all turned around and went, "Nan, what?" So that, I mean, just telling you that, my heart wells up with such appreciation as to what we can do with one theatrical production. And it is going to go out there worldwide, franchised, I'm determined. Does that answer it?
I mean, it answers it like more than you could answer any question, honestly. I feel like that kind of antidote specifically is just kind of leaves you in awe as well, because it's like this elderly woman who's lived a whole lifetime pretty much, and she's finally had the courage, or I guess the encouragement, to actually speak up about that. And after 70 years, that is so surreal, especially when you think about it more and more. It kind of just sinks in really deeply. But I think that is also just obviously a prime example of how much the arts can help so many people. So when it does become a massive franchise, I think it's going to be a global phenomenon. I think it's going to completely just transform the way people view mental health, especially, and the way they view themselves and the way they view other people. Because I think, especially what you say, this kind of taboo about mental health specifically, I think that's going to really break a barrier, which I think is just incredible. So my next question is diving into more of the process and behind the performance of Insight. What do you think about the production company? Like, what do they do that made it feel so authentic and real? How did they kind of create this performance that everybody could relate to?
Well, I think you can see it. We've got that Why Jenny's Day piece that we've been playing and replaying. And you can see it on the faces that they're really understanding the anguish of feeling overwhelmed and compromised as they're dancing. And they're really getting the solutions as well. Because we deal with what it's like, and then we deal with the solutions within the production. So the production comes with the solutions as well. And you can see that transformation. And I think for them, that language was profound for them.
I mean, for those who haven't obviously seen the performance, I think this should already be drawing you in enough to go and watch it already. But just obviously having watched it, and obviously, unfortunately, not in real life and being there, but even having watched it on a screen is already impactful enough. So if you haven't watched it, please go and make sure that you go do so after, obviously, this is all finished, because it's just astonishing.
Well,
really.
we've got snippets of it throughout today, so you're going to get.
Oh, amazing!
And it's the first time. This is the first time we've shown this production publicly like this since it was on. It was invited to be performed in Europe with a European cast, and it's been put away up until now. So today, these snippets you're seeing are exclusive before we relaunch this whole production, and I hope pretty soon, we've got to get funding, but pretty soon watch this space.
Oh, all right, amazing. So that's even better. That means people can obviously visualize what we're talking about at the same time as we're speaking about it as well. So many may not know that you yourself, Jenetta, do have a background in theatre, and I found this out when I had this conversation with you when I became an ambassador. So being someone who has obviously worked so closely in the industry, is there a certain stigma around mental health that you want to see abolished in terms of the way it is portrayed?
Definitely, because we've got an unhealthy attachment to avoiding death. Death's been given a bad name. Death must be avoided at all costs unless it's your time. Well, 50 years ago, your time was kind of like at 60, 70 years old. And now it's like 100, 110, a lot of people are. So when's a good time to die? Because back then you were old, so it's your time to die. But now people are going, oh, they died young at 60 and 70. So who wrote this rule book saying that you should die when it's appropriate? Well, when is appropriate? Because life and death is part of the cycle of life. You get born, you live, you die. But we've got, as much as we have a stigma against suicide, we've got a stigma against death, and the two are very closely connected, because we're so fearful of death. And I said this to Kev earlier, when you tell somebody they can't go there, guess where they go? They're there. Why can't I go there? What's there? So you say you cannot commit suicide. It's the most shocking thing to do. And I'm not saying to everybody, please go there. But I am saying that when you say you can't go there, you almost can't help yourself when you're in such a dire place. So for me, it's about softening the cycle of life, that birth and death are one and the same. And when you understand that it's about managing death rather than avoiding death, because there's so much fear and judgment attached to it, I believe when that starts happening, our suicide rate will start softening too. I'm a great believer. I've watched it. I work with kids that are incredibly troubled. When they start with me, they're in bed, they're self-harming, they're not washing, they're not eating. And within 3, because they're understanding that this is where the truth and light is, and it's a scientific truth, they're out of bed by the 3rd or 4th session starting to live a life, because they're understanding the bigger picture of what the cycle of life is. And now they can manage the starting new conversations. So that's where I believe it is. So let's take a break in this and let's have a look at birth and death. Over to you, Rachel. Death is a vital part of the cycle of life. It's the natural completion of being in one form into the birthing of being in new forms. At conception, the egg and the sperm die in their individual forms to unite and construct into a new combined version of themselves. death and rebirth is a continuing, never-ending spiral, an infinite continuum of destruction and construction as our cells die and reform. We're constantly dying and rebirthing ourselves on physical, mental, and emotional levels of our being. Within the joyful and beautiful experience of birth comes an equal amount of tension, stress, and pain, and they are the natural union for all creativity. Joy and pain are as one in the cycle of birth and death. There is a distorted fear about death, that it's something that should be avoided at all costs, that there is a prescribed age or time to die, and only then is it permissible. And yet, death is the most certain thing in our life. It's the only thing that's guaranteed after we're conceived. Wow.
I mean, I just love it. I just love it so much. It's just brilliant. So hope everybody else enjoyed watching that clip. And basically what you were saying just before the clip was played is what is basically told in the snippet that we just got to see. My next question, what do the arts mean to you?
Everything. Everything. I mean, my second home was the Kenya National Theatre. My dad and mum were theatre critics on top of everything else. Mum was a performer on the West End before she met my dad. And then when they moved to Cape Town, they started a review company, and some very well-known actors started with my dad, the man who'd never done any acting. One became a hugely well-known DJ, and the other was a film actor, all from my parents. And so we were in professional, semi-professional, and amateur theatre. I grew up. I had a Russian ballet mistress who had fled Russia at the time of the Russian Revolution. She was related to the Romanovs and used to go on holiday with them. And she was such a character. I mean, I'm sure there are some people watching who are from my childhood and know about Madame Zekovich, and she was such a character, bigger than life. So my whole life was theatre. We weren't in a show, we were helping in a show. So it means everything, because I know that's where expression really expresses itself. It's deep in my heart.
I love that. This is where expression expresses itself. I love that so much. We can all definitely agree that sometimes, obviously, just leading on to what you've just said, that sometimes expressing and releasing emotion through the arts can be much more beneficial than actually having to verbalize the way we feel. So why do you think that is? Why do you think it's always more impactful to express rather than speak?
Because when you're speaking, a lot of your logical brain is trying to take control, and a lot of your emotions are trying to rise, and we're trying to suppress the emotions. So there's a lot of try, and there's a lot of judgment, and a flow comes in when you're using the arts that just naturally softens that judgment and that fear.
I love that so much. I mean, I'm just saying I love that so much because I really do. I mean, I just agree with everything you're saying, really, Jenetta. My next question is more about the future of World Jenny's Day. So where do you see World Jenny's Day in the next 5 years? What do you want people to be getting from this event and everything that's coming from it?
Oh, wow. I see this whole Jenny's Day being bigger than Jenny and me. I see it becoming a household name globally, so that these conversations can change everybody just by the fact that our content is all about theatre and the arts, because that was where we see it. Kev Orkian alluded to it at the beginning of today, saying he saw galas, big galas, big galas with some pretty influential names, so that we can use theatre and the arts, start those new conversations globally. Everybody knows World Jenny's Day and what it's creating, and there's no looking back, because that plan we're sitting down and we're doing 100-year plan after this World Jenny's Day with Neil, my son, who's with Moira. We're sitting down and doing that. So I can't wait to see where this is taking it. And then I want to eventually, I'm not ready yet, but I want to eventually hand over the baton to the next generation, you, Vanessa, the insight baton, the World Jenny's baton, and the epiphany process baton. And then I will go out as the mouthpiece speaking internationally.
Wow. I mean, I think it's just the perfect way to do it, isn't it? I think that World Jenny's Day, it's going to forever live on, which I think is just extraordinary. And it's always going to be a legacy. And everyone's always going to know that, oh, the 10th of October, that is World Jenny's Day, that is World Mental Health Day. If there's any day that I want to open up about something, today is the perfect day to do it. So I can't wait. Who says it needs to happen in the next 5 years? It could happen anytime soon. So can't wait till more people are going to hear about it. And, you know, when you're going to get that call, it's going to be like, we would love to have insight on Broadway or on the West End or whatever that conversation or that opportunity is going to arise, you know.
I have to tell you, it almost made Albanelli in New York. It almost did. And then I had to wait for funding. But my year of living in New York, my ballet teacher there teaches at Albanelli. And the moment she heard what we were doing, she's saying, we've got to get it there. And it was this close to going to be performed in New York. But watch this space.
Definitely, watch this space. My final question is, what would your advice be to someone who is trying to find or refine purpose in their lives?
Well, for me, I always say there are two types of clients I have. The one that is comfortable being uncomfortable. Now, in motivational terms, that means that you're relaxed and you're not uncomfortable and things are going okay. But for me, it means the opposite. When you're in extreme pain, emotional and mental pain, and you know that you're hating it, but there's something happening that's serving you in that. And it keeps you in the pain loop, because you're comfortable being uncomfortable, because there's something happening that you're more attached to keeping than getting rid of the pain. So an example, here's a very good example. Me losing Jen, suddenly this community comes forward and, they filled our fridge. For 2-3 weeks, it was groaning with food. People were there supporting, loving, sympathy, a lot of it more than empathy. And now suddenly I mattered because I'd lost my Mother of Jenny's label. So for some people, they don't want to lose that. They don't want to lose that. So they stay in their loss to keep people around them. And so they're comfortable in their uncomfortableness, even though it's darn painful. So for anybody who is ready to move on and live an inspired life, and how to deal with challenges in a way that they become your ally and your greatest way forward. When you're at that point that I explained earlier, where I crossed the road and I knew I couldn't take another minute of being the way I was. So that's when you're uncomfortable being uncomfortable, and there's no way you can go on like that. Then you're ready to do what my clients would say, Jenetta and her mental push-ups and emotional sit-ups. You're ready for daily gym, and it's a skill and a practice. When you're ready for that, there's no looking back.
Wow, that is just an amazing piece of advice. I hope everybody, really takes it in, lets that sink in as well. And I never heard of that statement before, somebody being comfortable in their uncomfortableness, because we always kind of have that phrase where it's like, oh, you need to get out your comfort zone. But what if they're already out of that, but somehow they're comfortable outside of the comfort zone, which is something that we don't really ever think about, which is really odd as well. So thank you for bringing that up as well, because that's also kind of opened my own perspective of things also. But if there's anything else that you'd like to mention, Jenetta, then please go ahead and take the floor. Otherwise, that is pretty much all of my questions for today, but you've answered them amazingly, and I'm just so grateful to be part of this. I know that Jenny herself would be so proud, and this is just amazing. I mean, there's not really much as I can say. Amazing is an understatement, really.
Well, Vanessa, your presence in all of this has amped that understanding up, because you have the capacity to make a difference to so many young people with us having these conversations. So I thank you and I honor you as well. And I really appreciate you being our ambassador. I knew when I asked you that this was going to be a way forward that would make a huge impact for so many. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy the rest of our Jenny's Day.
Yes.
And yeah, thank you for having me.
No, and I hope you enjoyed the coffee you didn't have, but I really wanted to be able
It was imaginary, I had coffee this morning, so it was there in spirit afterwards,
Okay. Love you lots. Speak to you soon.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Okay, bye.